Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Trinity Stamps. They have their new March release out. There's so much adorable stuff, but I was totally drawn to this one right here. This is called Better Than an Email. And it is a full size stamp. So this is going to fit like the front of an A2 size card. There is some sub sentiments in there as well as these two little hearts. I'm going to use them to kind of fill up the rest of the card front, which is exactly how it's laid out in the stamp set. So this wasn't a genius move on my part by any means. This was just how it was laid out in the stamp set. So I have just a white cardstock panel here, and I'm going to stamp this in black. I am going to be coloring with some Copic markers, so I'm using ink that is safe for that. So before we get too far into the who, what, when, where, why of the card, I just wanted to make sure to address that this is part of a video hop for Trinity Stamps' new release. They're doing a $25 gift card giveaway to a random comment along the hop, and you'll be able to find the next stop on the hop in the link below. It's open until March 14th, so make sure you hop around so you can see everybody's beautiful projects and then also have as many chances to win as possible. So, I, about 7 years ago, when I worked for Simon Says Stamp, I did a video very similar to this, but I actually broke it up into 2 or 3 videos. I can't remember. Susie Plantamanera, very, very talented, works for Simon, and she would do these card panels. And she may still do them. I'm not entirely sure. But they were always adorable. And they're just like almost like pre-put together cards. And oftentimes people weren't really sure what to do with them. And this is kind of like the same thing. So you have a sentiment that fills up your whole card front. And oftentimes people are kind of stumped at what they can do with them. Now, Trinity released a similar one February, and I used that one too because I loved it. I'm totally drawn to them. I think they're great. So I kind of wanted to just go over like from beginner, intermediate to more expert level, like the things that you can do all of them or 1 or 2 of them, or, you can mix them up however you see fit to kind of get a different look, but just to show you what you can do with these. And they're really fun. So this is kind of your beginner level, right? So the first thing that we're going to do, this is sped up. I do not color this fast. But kind of pick your color scheme. For me, I picked a rainbow because I love rainbows and they make me happy. But pick your color scheme and then just color in your image. So in this case, I colored in kind of the outline letters, this little flag that houses the then, and then I could have colored in the scroll, but I actually opted to color in the word email. And again, I like rainbows. Rainbows make me happy. So I'm just kind of working in that order from the Roy to the Biv on the bottom. This is something that's like super simple. Just color them in. We're not doing any sort of shading. And this is just going to help give it some color, which is pretty simple. Most of us can do this. To make it more interesting, rather than just doing, so this is like the first bump up, rather than just doing flat one color, we can do a gradient of colors. And so we're going to start at the top. I am going over the tippy top of the portion of a card with a pink. So I'm going to have it go from a pink to a red. And I'm going to add in a little bit of darker shading of the red at the bottom of the letters that spell a card. And this is just going to help give them just a little bit more dimension. You could do this a little bit differently. Like if you didn't want to blend the different color families, you could just go in and add more dimension, leave them the same base colors that we've colored them. This would just be red, and then we would shade it with maybe, a 2 or 3 color blend in order to get the red to be a bit deeper. But I chose to do it this way because I knew how I wanted to do my background, and I felt like it would go, like they would flow better. So I colored in my little hearts orange, added a little bit of shading to the bottom. And then for the better, this is a very large portion of our card front. So we want to make sure it's nice and interesting. So I'm going to add a darker orange at the top, and you can see I'm not adding very much, just a little line across the top. Then I'm going to bring that down with more of a like traditional orange. This is a YR04. I'm going to bring that down just a little bit. And then I'm going to switch to the bottom where I'm going to bring up some green. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did at the top, just in reverse. I'm going to add a little bit of a darker green on the bottom. Then I'm going to blend that out with a mid-tone green, and then I'm going to go back in with my yellows. So the yellow is still very much going to be represented, like the yellow of the rainbow is still going to be, represented in the coloring that we have. But the word better is just going to be so much more interesting because we kind of have this tricolor look going on. In order to help that orange blend in a little better, I am going to bring in a Y38, which is a pretty light orange. It's much more on the yellow side. And then a Y08, which is obviously a yellow. So that's just going to help kind of blend that down. And then I'll hit it with the Y02, which was my lightest color to begin with, to blend in the greens to the yellow, and then the darker yellow into the yellow. But you can kind of play around with this. I did rainbows, but you don't have to. You could use, anything on the color wheel that's going to work together. So let's say you really love, or your recipient really loves, like teals and blues and greens. You could absolutely do that. Where that's the main focus of the coloring that you're doing. And then you could go left or right, you could go up and down, you can do this however you would like. This is just the way that I chose to do it. I did want to incorporate some blue greens. So I'm going to go right over top of the previous green with my blue greens, a little bit of a darker color and then more of a mid-tone. I didn't love the way that this blended, so you'll see in just a little bit I'm going to come back with a BG11 and go over top of that. I also extended those blue greens down into the top of the email. So doing the same thing, adding the darker color to the tippy top and then using that mid-tone to just blend that in, and then I'll blend my blues up from the bottom. This one is just, this is a kind of card that I like to make when I am struggling with my mojo. Now, I'm not currently, but this is the kind of card that is really great for me because I don't have to set anything up. Don't have to think about the layout. I don't have to think about how everything's going to fit on the card. All that work is done for me, and all I have to do is sit and color and just kind of let my mind wander, and that is really what relaxes me and makes my heart happy. So I love cards like this. Now, if you haven't seen the rest of the release, if you're just stopping by here to check out my video, I would highly recommend checking out the other ones, as well as going to the website and checking out the release. They have a lot of really fun dies this time around that are super, super cute. But I'm a stamp girly, so I was totally drawn to this first. And just the kind of the fun different ways that you can play around with it. But I will be at some point playing around with those dies because they're very, very adorable. I would recommend you checking them out. So here for the little hearts, I decided to complete my rainbow just by making them purple. And this is the only one where I really used more than two colors. And that's just because, especially this larger heart, it just needed 3 colors to get that kind of dimension. So now the next thing that you can do is, of course, add some ink blending. This is there's no dye for this. It's just a stamp. which I think kind of the industry maybe has gotten away from. But honestly, I still think they're great. I still think stamps are wonderful. So you can add some ink blending because I am doing the rainbow right over the rainbow. I'm not really worried about it covering up any of my coloring because they're the same. It would be like tone on tone. But I am being a bit more light-handed. I love these, the blending buddies from Trinity. They are my favorite tool to use to lay down ink because they pick up so much ink and they lay it down super smooth. And I typically like really bright colors, but you'll see each time I'm kind of blotting it off on my glass mat, and that's because I don't want it to be too dark because of the next step. So again, totally add ink blending. That's something that you can do in the background that's really kind of simple and easy. If you don't love ink blending, you could absolutely stamp this on watercolor cardstock and paint in a background. That would be great, I think. You just want to do one of the options. I shouldn't say you want to do something because maybe you don't. Maybe you like the white and that's awesome. But if you're looking to add something more, try adding some color into your background. So again, just doing the same thing as far as like rocking that rainbow from top to bottom. Just because I like a rainbow. No, I have no other reason other than that. But yeah, so then once we do this, then the next thing that you can do that is an option to add is you can do some stenciling or some stamping just to add more interest to the background. I don't know that I would do any sort of pastes. I mean, you can, but I wouldn't do them directly over the letters unless you're into fussy cutting. You could fussy cut them out. That would be an option too. But if you do some stamping, like tone on tone stamping, or if you did your stamping, kind of created your background first and did your stamping and then did the black of the better than an email stamp over top of it, that might be cool too. But I'm going to do stenciling. I told you, I love this catching rays. What is it? Catching some rays stencil. And I swear to you, I find a way to use it in like every card that I make. If you watch my channel and you have not purchased this stencil by now, you're never going to do it because I use it all the time. Here, I'm just checking my yellow because I did go pretty light-handed with it, but I wanted to make sure that you could still see it. So, stenciling or stamping in the background, tone on tone is going to distract less from your sentiment. But you can do whatever makes your heart happy, whatever look you're going for. One of the other things that you can do that I didn't do this time around, but I did consider it, is you can also add stamps of like other characters from different stamp sets. So I had actually pulled out some gnomes and I was like, oh, those would be really cute. Like, maybe down in the bottom corner or sitting on the bedder, like those would be really adorable. So that's another option that I didn't do, but is an option. Here, I'm just going in, I'm going to add some shading to the flagpole here. It's not even really a flagpole, it's like a pennant, really. But then I'm also going to add some shading to the scroll that's housing the end email words. And I just chose some cool grays because I prefer cool grays to warm grays. Warm grays kind of sometimes look a little brown to me. But again, this is just your personal preference. Also, what goes with your color scheme. If you're using more reds, oranges, yellows, just warmer colors in general, a warmer gray will probably work better for you. Whereas a blue, purple, green kind of combination, those are a bit cooler colors, and the cool grays will make more sense. So here, I'm not adding shading to this whole thing. I'm not coloring it in solid. I'm just adding shading to kind of the left and right of it to help it kind of pop forward. And so I'm leaving the middle pretty empty. And you'll see that I'm coloring right over the words. And that's just, again, because I'm using such light colors with the grays, I'm not really worried about it. If you were worried about it muting your colors, you could just go in with the blues and the teals again, or do this portion first. I'm just trying to show different levels, so I couldn't do this portion of the shading first. Speaking of grays, you can also add a shadow. Now, I typically like to add my shadow down and to the left. That's the way that I was taught it in art class 100 years ago in school, and it's just stuck with me. But whichever way you decide that you're going to add your shadow, just make sure it's consistent throughout the whole card. So if you're going to put your light source on the top left, then your shadows will be down and to the right. If you're going to do your light source in the top right, which is what I do, your shadows will be down and to the left. You could also do them in the bottom if you would like. But just make sure you keep it consistent, which is what I'm doing. Now, I did go a bit bolder because we have a lot of color going on here. So I did go a bit bolder than I normally would with my shadow. I went in with a C7. This is a little bit scary, even for me, who, is pretty comfortable with doing this. So if you wanted to start with a lighter color, just because you were unsure, no shame in that game at all. You could absolutely start with something like a C1 or a C3 just to kind of lay it down, to make sure you're happy with where it's going, and then go back in with a darker color. But you do want to use something that is at least a mid-tone in order to get the contrast to pull the letters up and have them be in the forefront. Now, I don't really care for like super harsh lines. So after I'm done with this C7, I am going to go back in with a C3 and just blend out the edge and make it a little bit softer. But that is a personal preference. You certainly do not have to do that. And as you know, you don't have to do any of this. These are just a couple of ideas for different kinds of things that you can do when you have a sentiment that is also your card design. And especially like just in the last couple of years with like hand lettering and stuff becoming more popular, I do think that we're seeing a lot more of these in, our little neck of the woods of card making. And I think they're great. I do some hand lettering, I have for years. Well, I haven't done it in quite some time, let's just be honest. But I did for years. That was how I did my Bible journaling, was with hand lettering. So I thoroughly enjoy these. I think they're great. I very rarely colored mine. I typically just drew them and left them as line art. But I love coloring other people's. I think it's really fun. So here's where we're going to go in with that C3. And if you happen to make a mistake, and you need to go in with a 0 marker to clean it up, like, fret not, because your 0 marker isn't going to move your distress inks in the background. It's not going to react with those. It will if you're using other inks, though. So if you're using other inks that are not just like basic dye inks, you can get some reactions with something that's solvent based. So maybe just double check before you go in. But if you're using, distress inks, distress oxides, it's not gonna budge your background. But you can obviously, affect the ink on your actual letters with a 0 marker, just like you would with any other alcohol marker. So you do want to be aware of that. But if you need to clean up some edges, you can go in with that 0 marker. If you've made it the way that I did. If you made it your own way, double check it, test it out just to be sure. This one ended up being, which we're going to be getting to here shortly. This card ended up being my first ever pouch shaker card. What do they call those? Shaker pouches? I think they call them shaker pouches. I've never used, I've made my own, but I've never used one that was put together. So easy, guys. It was so easy. So obviously, if you've watched my videos, you fully expected this. You can always add glitter. This is a clear Wink of Stella. No, this is Nuvo's clear. glitter pen, but I also like the clear Wink of Stella. I use them pretty much interchangeably. Just whichever one you like. So you can add subtle glitter this way. You can also, if you want them to appear to be shiny, or you just want to add, a little extra oomph to help them kind of pop forward, you can go in with a white gel pen and just add some little highlights. That's what you see me doing here. It's a really easy way. I love a white gel pen. I love a glitter marker. They pretty much make an appearance on almost every single thing that I create. If you're not really sure about how much or where to put your white gel pen, just let the marker kind of skip. Okay, if you don't put down a ton of, well, sometimes if you put down too much pressure, it won't roll either. You want to have a light hand, but just let it kind of do its thing, and it'll skip in certain areas. It's not going to be a solid line, and it'll be super organic, and you won't have to worry about how it's going to look. So this is another fun way that you can just kind of add in a little bit of detail to help your card look different than everybody else's. Now, if you want the real glitter, you can add that too, which I am. So on my hearts, I'm going to go in, this is Stardust Stickles from Ranger. This is the only color I use, and it's because it picks up the color of whatever is behind it. And so I'm just going to fill in my hearts. You could also just outline them if you don't want to completely fill them in. But these are my go-to glitters. And then if you want your card to not just look shiny, but actually be shiny, you can add some glossy accents, which is, I'm going to add it to the word card and to the word better, because those are the two things that, I want to be kind of the focal point, because a card is better than an email. I mean, hands down, there's no argument there. So I'm going to add that there. The glossy accents has a really fine tip, and it's really, really easy to kind of get into these smaller spaces. You can also use the, what do they call it? Clear lacquer from Hero Arts, but that one does have a wider tip, so you just have to be a little bit more careful. So now this is dry. The second to last thing that you can do is you can trim it. So you can change the size. So you can do this with a die cut, or you can do it with a paper trimmer. In this case, I'm going to cut mine down to be 4 by 5 1/4. And you can see I'm flipping it all around, so that way my design still stays centered. And then this would allow me to give it a mount, which will make it slightly more interesting. Or in my case, turn it into a shaker, which is what I'm going to do. So these are the flat acetate shaker pouches. The one I'm using is the A2 layer shaker. Here, did you see that little trick? My friend Jen taught me that. So there's a clear foam on top of it. In order to get the clear foam to come off really nice and easy, you just stick some tape to the edge and then it pulls it right off. Fantastic. It was so easy to do. But so basically this one is going to allow me to make my whole card front a shaker, but still have a mat. So it will be the 4 by 5 1/4. I am using Trinity's Rip and Stick tape on all of the, edges that we're going to adhere around the back. So once I have that where I want it, which is just on all 4 of the little flaps, I'm going to remove the release paper on only 3 of the sides. And like I said, I've never used one of these before, but this was so easy. And Trinity has a bunch of, so they have like a full A2, they have the layer one here, they have some circles, they have some slim lines, they have all kinds of bunches of sizes. You just lay your card front in there, and then you fold these little plastic tabbies right over the back of it, and that tape will stick to the card, the card front. And because we have that open spot at the top, it's going to give us a place where we can kind of just dump in all of our goodies that are going to be our shaker bits, and it makes the whole front of the card shiny. They're really fantastic. I do have some regrets about the shaker bits that I put in here. I feel like I went a little heavy with the pastels, and I should have used maybe some darker colors, but nonetheless, it came out super cute, and I'm sure somebody will appreciate receiving it. But I did all of the colors of the rainbow. I did not have any red. I only had pink, so I did put pink in there instead of red. But because it's a whole card front, like, you do want to be pretty generous with your filler. And then once all of them are in there, I can kind of shake them down to the bottom, flip it over, remove that last little bit of release paper, and then fold that over the top. My nail did not want to catch it. I had to get a little pokey tool to grab it. And then I can just fold this over the top. That's going to seal everything in. And then I will be able to shake my shaker bits all around. And who honestly doesn't do this for like a really, really long time? I do. I play with it for quite some time. So I'm going to spare you all of the me playing around with the shaker bits. But here we are. And so it is full on the bottom, but the only thing that's down there is the heart. So like when you can see the heart when the shaker bits are shaking around up top, or if it's like standing up, then the only thing that's being covered is the heart. You can still read the full sentiment. So in order to attach this, I just used some more rip and stick tape. They do have larger panels, and I don't know why I didn't think to grab those, but I didn't. I just used the strips, and so far it's held fine. I did add to the strips some liquid adhesive just to give myself a little bit of wiggle room for putting it down straight. But I mean, it worked really, really well. So I really like I did a shaker one with the other one, the other set that they released in February, and I did the floating sentiments. So if you missed that, I will link to that at the end of the video, because that's another kind of fun one that's a full sentiment kind of card. And for that one, we did it on acetate. The only thing that I will tell you with these stamp pouches, just something to keep in mind, is there is a little bit of a gap on the corners, like where the flaps are. Not enough for a rhinestone or like a bubble to fall out of. But if you had loose glitter in here, I do think maybe some of the loose glitter would be able to escape. I don't put loose glitter in my shakers, so that's not a concern for me, but just in case you do. So I hope that this gives you kind of some ideas of all the different things that you can do when your sentiment is the focal point of your card. I think it's really fun. You guys will have to let me know what you think. Don't forget to leave a comment so that way you're entered to win in the giveaway. Thank you so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.